floor to ceiling of Jackson's possessions, most of it never seen publicly since he died. This warehouse is 20,000 square feet. Every inch of it is full. There are antiques and video games from Neverland Ranch.
What do you get when you combine a fire truck, a horse-drawn carriage, and a golf cart painted with Peter Pan? Michael Jackson's garage. When the King of Pop died in 2009, people expected to find exotic sports cars and luxury vehicles. What they found instead was something far stranger, a collection that revealed a man desperately clinging to childhood, spending hundreds of thousands on vehicles that had nothing to do with performance or speed. And just last month, something even more shocking was discovered in a forgotten storage unit. 12 unreleased songs nobody knew existed, along with recordings that reveal the real Michael Jackson behind closed doors. The truth about what was hidden is more unsettling than anyone imagined. The gold-plated palace on wheels. When Michael Jackson's estate prepared for auction in February 2009, just months before his death, the public got their first real look inside his vehicle collection. And one car immediately stood out from everything else. A 1999 Rolls-Royce Silver Seraph limousine that looked like it had been ripped straight from the Palace of Versailles. Jackson personally designed the interior of the limo, which makes generous use of 24-karat gold. We're not talking about gold accents or gold trim. The entire interior was an explosion of 24-karat gold and crystals. The dark blue Seraph wears an interior which looks to have been pulled directly from the Palace of Versailles, as automotive journalists described it. When an interviewer once compared Jackson's shopping habits to French King Louis XIII, the pop star replied, "That's my taste." And he meant it. The Rolls-Royce wasn't just transportation. It was a mobile throne room. The vehicle's 5.4-liter V12 aluminum engine could generate up to 322 horsepower, but Jackson never drove it himself. He sat in the back, surrounded by gold, being chauffeured like royalty. Here's what's telling about this car. Jackson had at least 4 limousines in his collection, but this one was special. He spent time designing it personally. He specified every detail, every gold flourish, every crystal placement. For someone who claimed to be humble and childlike, he sure spent a lot of energy creating the most opulent, ostentatious vehicle imaginable. But the gold-plated Rolls-Royce was just the beginning. As the auction catalog revealed more vehicles, it became clear that Jackson's garage wasn't about cars at all. It was about something much deeper and more disturbing. The Peter Pan obsession. The automobiles he used on his bizarre Neverland Ranch, which has sadly now been left to rot, included a horse-drawn carriage, a fire truck, and, of course, a Peter Pan golf cart. Yes, you read that correctly. A Peter Pan golf cart. It's the customizations on this particular black golf cart that Michael Jackson used to get from the train station to the Ferris wheel and everywhere in between that make it so strange. The cart had a painting of Michael Jackson dressed as Peter Pan on the hood. Him as Peter Pan, in the classic green tunic, flying pose, the whole thing. Jackson used this cart to drive around his 2,600-acre Neverland Ranch property, from his personal zoo to his amusement park rides to his movie theater. Every trip was a reminder of his obsession with the boy who never grew up. The cart remarkably fetched between $4,000 and $6,000 at the 2009 auction. But it wasn't just the golf cart. In another nod to Peter Pan, Michael Jackson commissioned an electric horse-drawn carriage from the Montana Carriage Company. This unusual vehicle came with modern amenities, including a CD player, sound system, and lighting. It even had a Neverland Valley decal on its sides, an electric horse-drawn carriage with a sound system. That's not normal. That's someone trying to live inside a fantasy. The carriage was also part of Julian's auction in 2009 and was sold for around $10,000 to further pay off his many debts. Here's where it gets even stranger. Adding to the strangeness of Michael Jackson's car collection, he also owned a customized 1986 GMC High Sierra 3500, which he had converted into a fire truck. The vehicle came with functional hoses, a water tank, and flashing red lights. A fire truck on his personal property. Why would anyone need a fire truck on their estate? According to those who studied Jackson's behavior, this 1986 GMC High Sierra 3500 fire truck may have been a way to satisfy his love for Peter Pan. In the Peter Pan story, there's adventure, rescue, and heroism. Jackson wanted to be the hero. He wanted to save people. He wanted to be the boy who never grew up, flying around saving the day. The press had been calling it out for years. His obsession with the character and apparent fascination with all things youth-oriented quickly resulted in the press labeling Jackson as having Peter Pan syndrome. Not listed in any diagnostic journal, it's a pop psychology condition referring to an adult, usually male, who does not want to engage with the world as an adult, but rather remain in a state of childlike innocence. The stolen childhood. To understand why Jackson filled his garage with fire trucks and Peter Pan golf carts instead of Ferraris and Lamborghinis, you have to understand what happened to him as a child. Because the vehicles weren't just quirky collector's items, they were symptoms of deep psychological trauma. During the Motown years, especially, was when Michael began noticing this phenomenon that he would talk about multiple times in his life, says Steve Knopper, author of MJ, the Genius of Michael Jackson. The story he told repeatedly was that he was working away at a recording studio, and he looked across the street and saw kids playing, and he just yearned to be with them, rather than doing the thing he was doing. Michael Jackson had a successful career before he was of high school age. The Jackson 5 were massive, but I never had the chance to do the fun things kids do, Jackson once said of his early life. While other kids were playing, riding bikes, and goofing off, Michael was performing, recording, rehearsing, being molded into a product. His father, Joe Jackson, was notoriously abusive. He lived an abusive childhood and was forced to be a star. As he grew up, he wanted to regress into the role of a child. He named his estate the Neverland Ranch, and it wasn't unheard of for him to dress up as Peter Pan. Jackson first visited the ranch when he visited Paul McCartney, who was staying there during their filming of the Say, Say, Say music video in 1983. According to Jackson's sister LaToya, he expressed interest in someday owning the property right then. 5 years later, in 1988, he made it happen. Originally named Zaca Ladera's Ranch, then renamed Sycamore Valley Ranch by developer William Bone, Jackson purchased it and immediately renamed it after Neverland, the fantasy island in the story of Peter Pan, a boy who never ages. So when Jackson became an adult with unlimited money, what did he do? He tried to buy back his childhood. He purchased Neverland Ranch for over $30 million and transformed it into the childhood he never had. Amusement park rides, a zoo, a movie theater, a train station, everything a kid could want. The ranch wasn't just a house with some decorations, it was an entire theme park on 2,600 acres. There was a 65-foot Ferris wheel, custom-made for Jackson in 1990 for $215,000 by the manufacturer Eli Bridge Company. There was a carousel, zipper, octopus, pirate ship, wave swinger, super slide, roller coaster, bumper cars, and an amusement arcade. There were trains, multiple trains. One was a 2-foot narrow gauge with a C.P. Huntington replica locomotive. Another was a custom-made private electric train purchased by Jackson for his own children, Michael Jr., Paris, and Prince II, manufactured in 2001 by a German company and set up with 100 feet of track behind the main house. And his garage reflected that same desperate attempt to recapture lost innocence. One was his replica of a 1909 Detamble Model B Roadster. It would have been near impossible to find an original model of the car, but Jackson decided to have his own custom model created instead of searching for one of the earliest cars. He didn't want modern supercars. He wanted old-fashioned vehicles that reminded him of simpler times, times he never actually experienced. The sleek green two-seater was meant to fetch $4,000 to $6,000 at the 2009 auction and had monogrammed initials MJJ for Michael Joseph Jackson, which really made it special. Even his tour bus was childlike. Jackson's collection included a 1997 Neoplan tour bus with individual seats and booths and a king's crown embroidered in the carpet. Possibly used on the History World Tour, the bus featured a bathroom lined in porcelain, gold, and granite, a king's crown on the carpet, gold bathroom fixtures. He was an adult man living in a child's fantasy of what being rich meant. Jackson also owned a 1993 Ford Econoline 150 van that was heavily customized. The van was equipped with a game console, a TV screen located at the front of the passenger seats, and high-end leather upholstery. It was like a media van, complete with multiple television screens and a vintage video game console. Who knows if it ever left Jackson's ranch? since he purchased it around the time when he stopped publicly driving. With all its amped-up features, though, why would you even need to drive it? The car he actually loved. Among all the bizarre vehicles, there was one car that Jackson kept longer than any other. His 1985 Mercedes-Benz W126 LWB was the car he primarily drove between his Encino, California house and the Los Angeles studio he recorded at. It wasn't customized with gold. It didn't have Peter Pan painted on it. It was just a regular Mercedes. The Mercedes was your typical SEL. It was powered by a 5-liter V8, rated at 302 horsepower, hooked to a 4-speed automatic transmission. Some of the sedan's features included powered seats, automatic temperature control, burr walnut trim, and a custom audio system. That's about a 40-mile round trip from Encino to Los Angeles. Normal driving for a normal car. When he moved to his Neverland Ranch in Los Olivos, California, he brought his Benz with him. Though by now Jackson had stopped driving the Benz, it still saw use around his 2,600-acre ranch. This was in the 1990s when Jackson gave up driving entirely. From that point forward, he only rode in the back of vehicles, never behind the wheel. In 1981, Michael Jackson had gotten his driving license at the age of 23, which is unusual for a star with plenty of money. LaToya, Michael's sister, said that she did not want to be in a car with Michael driving because he had dangerous driving habits. Michael was once tossed in jail because he had an outstanding ticket after a police officer pulled him over. Although he had a bad reputation with his driving, this did not stop him from collecting cars. But after about a decade behind the wheel, he gave it up completely. No more driving himself anywhere, always chauffeured. Once he was through with the sedan, he gave it to a favorite aunt for her birthday. She bought a vanity plate to thank her famous nephew that read TKSMKL. That's Thanks Michael in vanity plate speak. After his death, she sold it at auction. Later in 2009, the Mercedes was sold for $104,550. It went to the Hollywood Star Cars Museum in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. It has remained the property of the museum since then. The car was sold with photos of Jackson driving it. When have you ever seen Michael Jackson driving a car? He was always chauffeured or driven, said Darren Julian, president of Julian's Auctions, that Mercedes was the closest Jackson came to owning a normal car. Everything else was either a limousine where someone else drove or a novelty vehicle he used on his property. Over the years, Jackson had over 75 vehicles, which mostly centered around luxury limousines. 75 vehicles, and he didn't drive any of them. Among those 75 were some particularly strange choices. He owned a 1990 Rolls-Royce Silver Spur 2 trimmed in contrasting white leather and black fabric. Dark-tinted windows were adorned in white curtains, and a full-service bar that was, according to automotive journalists, used for God knows what. His white 1988 Lincoln Town Car had a much more subdued interior that used gray leather and fabric. Known for its long, sleek stance, this high-tech limo was ahead of its time, featuring tinted windows, a built-in TV, VCR, hi-fi sound system, and an intercom for complete privacy. Here's another strange one. The fourth limo is the same 1954 Cadillac Fleetwood used during the filming of Driving Miss Daisy. This particular vehicle boasted a unique and prestigious pedigree. It was the car that chauffeured Jessica Tandy in the 1989 film. Why would Michael Jackson own the car from Driving Miss Daisy? What connection did he have to that film? The answer is probably nothing specific. He just collected vehicles the way other people collect stamps, except that his vehicles revealed his psychology. He even owned a motorcycle that he never rode. The celebrity even owned a 2001 Harley-Davidson touring bike that he never rode. The bike, sold only in the US, was set to go to auction as part of the 2009 collection before it was pulled. A Harley-Davidson, never ridden, just sitting there as a decoration in his collection. The singer was not known for riding motorcycles, but they did feature in his 1988 experimental film, Moonwalker, and perhaps earned a place in his heart for it. Jackson also owned a 1988 GMC Jimmy High Sierra Classic. With all the fame and money the King of Pop earned, it would be strange owning this particular vehicle at that time. Michael's GMC Jimmy wasn't exactly a rare bird, but it's clear he acquired it for one simple reason: undeniable road presence. This truck commanded attention wherever it went. And honestly, that's a perfectly good reason to own one. While not a frequent sight behind the wheel of this particular vehicle, Michael's Neverland Ranch housed a collection of automotive treasures, many of which he cherished as collectibles rather than daily drivers. The storage unit discovery. 15 years after Jackson's death, something extraordinary happened. A man named Greg Musgrove, a former California Highway Patrol officer turned stay-at-home dad who'd started treasure hunting, gets a call from an associate. The associate had purchased an abandoned storage unit in Van Nuys, deep in the San Fernando Valley. The unit once belonged to Brian Loren, a music producer and singer whose current whereabouts are unknown, according to Musgrove. Brian Loren was perhaps best known for writing and producing The Simpsons' 1990 hit Do the Bartman. Jackson was featured in Loren's 1992 song To Satisfy You. But more importantly, Brian Loren had worked with Michael Jackson in the late 1980s and early 1990s, producing tracks for what would become the Dangerous album. When Musgrove went to inventory the storage unit's contents, he found something shocking. On the tapes are 12 unreleased tracks, music Jackson worked on before the Dangerous album, around 1989 to 1991. Left behind in the storage unit were several cassette and DAT tapes that included 12 unreleased songs and conversations between Jackson and Loren about recording and producing the music. 12 unreleased Michael Jackson songs. Nobody knew they existed. I've gone to all the fan sites. Some of the songs are rumored to exist. Some of them have been leaked a little bit, Musgrove tells The Hollywood Reporter. A couple aren't even out there in the world. But the songs themselves weren't the most revealing part. I'm listening to this stuff, and I would get goosebumps because nobody's ever heard this stuff before, Musgrove tells The Hollywood Reporter. To hear Michael Jackson actually talk and kind of joke back and forth, it was really, really cool. The tapes contained conversations between Jackson and Loren, unguarded moments, jokes, discussions about the creative process, Jackson describing his creative vision, explaining what he wanted from certain tracks, workshopping ideas in real time. This wasn't the public Michael Jackson with the soft voice and careful words. This was the real person behind closed doors, collaborating with a producer he trusted, letting his guard down. Some of the song titles were particularly revealing. They include Don't Believe It, perhaps referencing the endless Jackson-related rumor mill at the time, 7 Digits, so named for the ID tag given to bodies in a morgue, and Truth on Youth, on which Jackson raps in tandem with LL Cool J. Don't Believe It, a song about rumors. This was 1989 to 1991, right when Jackson's public image was getting stranger, and the tabloids were having a field day with stories about him. The song seems to reference the rumors that would circulate about the pop star in the media. The vibe and style of the song is consistent with the kind of music Jackson was releasing at the time. 7 Digits, a song about morgue identification tags. On the tape, Jackson can be heard explaining the intended meaning of this track, which references the identification number bodies receive in a morgue. That's dark, really dark. Jackson was thinking about death, about being reduced to a number, about mortality. This was years before his actual death, and he was already contemplating what it meant to be just another body, stripped of fame and identity. Perhaps one of the most fascinating tracks on the tapes is titled Truth on Youth, which is seemingly a rap duet between Jackson and LL Cool J. The rapper has spoken in the past about working with Jackson, confirming they had recorded music together. The song stands out for many reasons, but largely due to Jackson rapping on it. Hearing Michael Jackson rap was unusual enough, but a full collaboration with LL Cool J that nobody knew about? That's a piece of music history. The tragedy of it all. Here's where the story gets heartbreaking. Musgrove contacted the Michael Jackson estate to offer them the tapes. The estate, who Musgrove says did their own research into the tapes, declined to purchase the tapes for an unknown reason, but did provide him with an official letter stating that the estate does not claim ownership of these specific cassettes. They make it clear in the letter, however, that he and anyone else who might purchase these tapes down the line do not own the copyright on the recordings or the compositions. The estate does. Translation: these songs can never be released publicly. In response, the estate clarifies to THR that these tracks are not new, as the master recordings are currently housed in the estate's vaults. Essentially, these tapes can never be released publicly. So the estate already has copies of these recordings. They've had them all along. They just chose never to release them. Why? What's on those tapes that the estate doesn't want the public to hear? The conversations between Jackson and Lauren? The lyrics that reveal too much about his mental state? The unfiltered version of Michael Jackson that doesn't match the carefully crafted image? The estate has stated that they do not claim ownership of the tapes found, but hold copyright over the music. The unearthed recordings are estimated to be worth millions and had been considered for auction. But what good is owning something worth millions if you can't sell it, can't share it, can't do anything with it except listen to it yourself? Musgrove tried shopping the tapes around to different buyers, auction houses, anyone who might be interested. But the estate's position made it clear. These recordings exist in a legal gray area where they can be owned but never monetized, never shared, never heard by the public. They're essentially worthless from a commercial standpoint, yet priceless in terms of what they reveal about one of the most famous people who ever lived. The irony isn't lost on anyone. Here are recordings of Michael Jackson being himself, unguarded and real, and they're destined to remain hidden forever. Just like the man himself spent his life hiding behind personas, behind costumes, behind the walls of Neverland Ranch. Think about it. Michael Jackson spent his entire adult life trying to recreate childhood. He filled his garage with fire trucks and Peter Pan golf carts. He built Neverland Ranch as a monument to lost innocence. He surrounded himself with children because they represented what was stolen from him. He spent $450,000 on a fire truck he used to host parties for sick children, trying to be the hero he never got to have as a child. But underneath all of it was a deeply troubled person, someone who sang about being identified by a number in a morgue, someone who felt he had to defend himself against constant rumors with songs like Don't Believe It, someone who couldn't just be an adult because being an adult meant accepting that his childhood was gone forever. Jackson tragically died in June 2009 from cardiac arrest triggered by the anesthetic propofol. He died because his doctor was regularly giving him surgical anesthesia to help him sleep. That's not normal insomnia. That's someone so troubled, so unable to find peace, that they needed to be knocked unconscious every night. The propofol use had become routine, a nightly ritual just to escape consciousness. It's a level of desperation that most people can't comprehend. When the auction happened months before his death was announced in February 2009, the public got their first real look inside his vehicle collection. More than 2,000 items of fine and decorative arts, furniture, memorabilia, arcade games, Disneyana, and garden statuary from Michael Jackson's Neverland Ranch were set to be auctioned off at Julien's in Beverly Hills. But in mid-April, Jackson went back on it in a lawsuit demanding the return of the objects. The auction was canceled. Then he died in June. It is unknown what will happen to many of the Neverland Ranch possessions. Jackson did have a lot of debt, and surely some of these will wind up either on the auction block or in a museum. Eventually, items did go to auction. The fire truck sold. The Peter Pan golf cart sold. The gold-plated Rolls-Royce was pulled from auction due to legal disputes, probably considered too valuable to let go. These vehicles are now scattered around the world. The Mercedes is in a museum in Tennessee. The amusement park rides from Neverland have been dispersed to county and state fairs across California, Oregon, and Washington, sometimes with signs describing their Neverland origin. The Dragon Wagon children's roller coaster is in operation at Coney Island, New York City. The Sea Dragon swinging ship ride was purchased in 2008 by Beach Bend Park in Bowling Green, Kentucky. The bumper cars were permanently installed at Cal Expo, site of the California State Fair. Other pieces went to private collectors. The physical evidence of Jackson's obsession has been broken up and sold off. Neverland Ranch itself was put up for sale in May 2015 with an initial asking price of $100 million, renamed Sycamore Valley Ranch. Many people, including fans, protested and disagreed with the decision. Jermaine Jackson, elder brother of Michael, wrote an open letter to Colony North Star expressing his disagreement with their decision. But what remains is the psychological portrait they painted. A man so damaged by childhood exploitation that he spent the rest of his life trying to buy it back. A man who literally dressed as Peter Pan and drove around his property in a golf cart, with his own face painted as the boy who never grew up. A man who owned over 75 vehicles but didn't drive any of them because driving meant being in control, and Jackson spent his life being controlled by others. First by his abusive father, then by managers and record labels, then by the fame itself that imprisoned him. When people think of Michael Jackson's legacy, they think of Thriller, Moonwalk, The Glove, the music. They don't think about what was hidden in his garage. But maybe they should, because those vehicles tell a story that's more honest than any of his public statements. They reveal a tragedy that money couldn't fix, fame couldn't erase, and all the Peter Pan golf carts in the world couldn't change. The King of Pop died at 50, still trying to be a child, still surrounding himself with the trappings of childhood he never got to experience, still buying vehicles that represented rescue and heroism and fantasy instead of the reality he couldn't face. And somewhere in a vault, tapes exist of him talking freely, joking with a collaborator, being human for a moment before he had to put on the mask for the world. We'll probably never hear them, just like we'll never really know what it was like to be Michael Jackson. All we have are the clues he left behind, and his garage was full of them. 75 vehicles that he never drove, a fire truck that cost nearly $500,000, a golf cart with his face painted as Peter Pan, a Rolls-Royce covered in gold that was too valuable to sell, and 12 songs about morgue identification numbers and defending himself against rumors that will never see the light of day. That's the real story, not the music he released, not the performances the world saw, but the private collection of vehicles and unreleased recordings that showed who Michael Jackson really was when nobody was watching. A deeply damaged man trying desperately to recapture something that was stolen from him before he was old enough to understand what he was losing. Now, it's time to hear from you. What are your thoughts about what's been found in this legend's garage? Share with us in the comments section. If you enjoyed this video, there are many more shocking stories of your favorite icon to be discovered. Subscribe to our channel and check out the next video that pops up on your screen. You don't know what you'll discover next.